Why don't we get this meeting started officially? And I do have all the documents open, but it's going to take me a second. I guess, first of all, is any further public participation? I know we were just chatting unofficially about the funds that the town has received, that we still don't quite have a clear picture of how we can. So are there other comments about things that are not on the agenda?
Now, are we anticipating representation from the BOE or from the superintendent's office?
I do not know. I did not get any indication that they were or were not coming.
Nor have I.
Jim, Jim, did you get any?
No, I haven't gotten any communication either way.
Okay. Okay. Then hearing no public participation, the next item on our agenda is the minutes from last meeting. And I can share them, maybe. You're gonna have to give me a second to do that. So if everybody could just take a look at them. They were in your packet. And I am attempting to find them. Of course, cannot find them to put up there.
You might ask if anybody,
Does anybody
everybody
have
that's
any?
here read them.
Did anybody have a chance to read them?
I did not have a chance to read them. And
Okay,
I've got it open now. I'm skimming through it.
okay. I now have them too. Okay. I did have one question, and this is more, I guess, for Sandy. We included the entire resolution in here. Is that appropriate, or should it just be the final?
No, it is actually necessary to include
Okay.
the entire resolution. So thank
Okay.
you for doing that.
Thank you, Linda. I wasn't sure how it should be represented, so thank you for doing that. Are there any changes, suggestions, clarifications? If not, then I will approve them by unanimous consent. And we can move on to the next item on our agenda, which are the elected official and town staff reports. Board of Education is the first item on our agenda, and if it's okay with everybody, I would like to delay that in case somebody from the Board of Education joins us. If not, then we will just review the reports and I will take any questions and get back to you with answers. So can we do the town side first?
That would be fine with me.
Okay. Where would you like to start?
With the town reports.
Yeah, so tax collector report. This is where we are as of the end of September. Our current levy is at 98.67%, which as compared to last year is higher than last year. And we do have to realize that the amount that was in here was the full amount of the taxes, even though the bills that went out were at the lower amount, the 39 mils. So we will be getting additional monies in January for that. Though, Sandy, you reported in the 3-board meeting that quite a few of our, quite a few of the townspeople paid it in full when they paid this summer, correct?
That is correct. And unfortunately, I don't have that percentage in front of me, but it is quite high.
Very good. The supplemental motor vehicle will go out and not be due until January, so it's appropriate that it is at 0%. And any other questions on tax revenues? Okay. Would you, Sandy, would you like to go to fiscal year 21 unaudited first and then current year?
Sure.
You tell me which one you want to do next, because I'll put it up on the screen.
Whatever you've got highlighted is probably good. Let's go back to last year,
Okay.
because we talked about this a little bit last night. For anyone who wasn't able to join us. As of right now, we on the town side have still not closed the books on June 30th. There are several departments who are lagging behind in getting their invoices processed properly. However, we do expect the number of 670 plus to remain. The big items where we didn't anticipate returning were in fringe benefits, property insurance, building ops, and highway and streets. And those all come from either projects that were not completed or expenses, excuse me, as we came through to the end of the year, did not come to fruition. So I think I'm pretty pleased of where we ended up, especially since most of the town was closed down for a good period of time. If we can move to the next tab over, I think, which is fiscal 22. So far this year, things are proceeding as expected. I don't think there's anything here that should be of any concern to anyone at this point in time. And we're in most categories right where we should be.
Sandy, I know in our last meeting, you were saying that with all of the storms that we've had, and let's put the last couple of days sort of in that, there may be some additional expenditures on, highways and cleanup and dealing with all of that. Have you seen any of that come to fruition, or?
Yes and no. Right now, there is overtime in there for highway cleanup. But we've also been postponing projects that were otherwise planned. So it's hard to say where we're going to end up at this point.
Okay. I know
And the other good thing is some of the Jim and his team have been very diligent about applying for FEMA reimbursements for anything that is possible due to storm related, and we are recouping some of those costs.
Excellent.
great. Because we have had some kind of crazy storms this summer. So, okay. To the revenues, shall we go?
Sure.
Well, let's start with, I don't think we had the July statement. So this is the end of, no, this is the first
First
period,
month.
first month.
And I'm not sure. I mean, this is nice to look at as history, but I think if we move to September revenues, it'll be more meaningful.
Okay. So taking a look at September, we've obviously gone through the property taxes already. We have, what is this miscellaneous revenue that we're 1,200%? We budgeted 2,000 and we've already collected 24,000.
I don't know the answer to that. Jim, do you?
No, not off the top of my head.
Okay, just that sort of sticks out a little bit, just a little bit.
We will find out for you and get back to you.
Are there any of these that you are getting any inkling that may not come to fruition or less than what we budgeted for?
I think we talked about those a little bit last night. The donations in the education budget, senior donations in the town budget, and library fines and donations in the town budget. So far, we've had none, or very, very little. So the good news for that is those amounts are not significant to overall revenues. I think altogether they're less than $10,000, but we haven't heard anything else being held up or otherwise adjusted. Although I don't know if you noticed, but town aid roads came in 80 cents less than we expected.
No, I didn't catch that. It was, I just looked at that.
I'm sorry, it was
199.
it was 20 cents less than expected. That was the pilot grant. Sorry, not town aid roads.
I don't know about that. That's gonna hurt.
Yeah.
Kristen Gorley, you have your hand up.
No, it was just from the meeting from last night. I think Bob Monroe brought up a good point just about the choice funds. Can we just make a notation on that to track that? I'm curious to see
What is that? I'm sorry, I missed it.
It's for the choice.
Choice.
Yeah, since that does sound like that's going to be impacted, just if we can make a notation and track that. That is concerning about loss of funds there.
Okay. Any other hands up that I don't see? Okay, then let's move on to, I'm trying to think what we have not hit from the town side.
I think you've got it all.
I think I have. Okay, so then let's go to the Board of Education. Did anybody join from the Board of Education while I was presenting? Okay, if we take a look at their status, I think we got a pretty good update at the 3 board meeting the other night. Right now, they are on track. It's so early in the season to know if there's anything big coming on. Kristen did mention in the meeting, Kristen Hecht, Superintendent Hecht, mentioned in the meeting last night that there are some changes in special ed that are happening as we speak. And there are still several open positions that have not been filled. And there have been a few teachers that for a variety of reasons have left, are moving to new districts. So we are in the process of hiring to backfill those positions. Bob Monroe, you had a question?
More an observation, if that's okay.
Sure.
I just did some quick, simple math, and looking at the wages and benefits area, which I always kind of key on. to see where we are and understanding what Kristen was saying. And, I mean, it's unfortunate that we can't fill our positions, but just to show what kind of impact it's already having, that along with on the wages alone, there's I believe $112,000 underspend so far from the approved budget number on wages, and then benefits 101. And the total underspend at this point is actually 370,000 plus.
Can you just walk me through how you did that, just so everybody's on the same page? I'm assuming you're looking at the this section right here that I've got up, salary and wage.
Yes, exactly. And I compared it to the other document for the previous year,
Okay,
and just taking the total, the expenditure amounts for wages in both years. In September 30, 2020, you're looking at this number here, it's 1,127,000. Last year at this time, it was 1,127,000. This, at the same time last year, 1,339,000. And in regards to benefits, you're looking at a $338,000 expenditure compared to last year at this time, 439. So, I mean, there can be a pay period difference in here, which I don't know. But I think the insurance has stayed, at least it was when I was working on a monthly basis. So it may be starting to indicate that we may in fact have some substantial balances there.
Mhm. I think the one thing to be careful in comparing last year to this year is there has been some changes in staffing. So the salary ranges, the number of staff is the same, but the salaries that those staff are at is different from last year. So
Yeah, and then we have fewer staff.
Yeah.
well, when,
Saying it's going to last, and hopefully she gets to fill these positions, because they got to be just going crazy over there.
mhm.
But this is what the numbers are showing at this point.
And I think Bob, to your point, this is Ross speaking. I think it's just something good to get from the superintendent, just some, insight into what's behind the numbers. Because, just looking at the numbers, they don't necessarily tell you anything, but they do beg some questions to be asked to just understand what's going on. So I think this, because of the substantial amounts, it would be good to ask Superintendent Heck for a little insight into, is this going to continue in this manner, or are they filling positions, and what, kind of just the backstory.
Yeah, no, I actually provided that backstory before I even went into the numbers, Ross. And the backstory is this, that they continue to have a number of vacancies, in particular in special ed, that they cannot fill.
Right.
There are other mainstream courses they also cannot fill. So the resulting savings in fringe benefits. So those go hand in hand, and it's a direct causal relationship.
Yeah, well, I heard what you said, but then there's also the question, do they expect to fill them? Or are they giving up on filling them?
Oh, no, I asked her, that's right, I'm sorry, you weren't there last night.
No, I wasn't there last night because I had to chair the Inland Wetlands Commission meeting. So, that's why I'm asking.
Yeah.
No, she did indicate that they are still actively hiring for all of those positions.
Recruiting.
And recruiting. So it's a process.
Okay, so then we do have that information then. So there is this gap, between last year's spending rate and this year's, and we have an explanation for it. And it looks like they're going to try to hire, but again, the later in the year that they hire, the more of a difference there's going to remain.
Mhm.
Exactly.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Emily, this was Jim. I did text with Kristen, and she reminded me that she told us she would not be available for the meeting
Thank you.
tonight. And the $24,000 in miscellaneous revenue was from the sale of an old plow truck.
Oh, okay.
Terrific.
Great. Thanks. You've been busy. Kristen Gurley, I saw your hand up.
I did, and it's just along the same lines. I think it's important for us to note, and I'm glad that Bob did the math on that. But when we set the budget, we can't forget the why behind this. And, you know, hopefully, I think we're all in agreement that having these vacancies is not a good thing, but I just don't want that to get lost when we're looking at the numbers, when the number is, you know, X amount, and then people say, oh, wait a second, look, they had to return so much. But that could be part of the reason why, and it's going to be a large probably reason why, is because, you know, we've been getting this money that we haven't had to spend because we haven't had the positions. Does that make sense? I just don't want the.
Oh, yeah. And I brought it up just to show you that it's already a gap, you know? And I mean, I'm all for seeing it being spent because we know that kids are, there's a, you know, a portion of our school kids are really directly suffering as a consequence. They could be benefiting from those expenditures, but unfortunately, doesn't seem to be improving.
No.
No. Okay, Charlie.
Yeah, I think to comment on this whole topic that we're talking on now. Last night, they were also talking about, because of the lesser numbers of students at the school, that there's going to be a big gap in other areas of the budget for making payments and debts and things like that. And we will have to be making up that difference. And I think we'll be looking at seeing one gap maybe perhaps offsetting another, so that it doesn't necessarily mean at the end of the year we're going to have a big surplus, because we're going to have some big gaps going the other way as the year progresses.
Yeah, and particularly tuition.
Yes, exactly what I'm referring to.
Yeah, the number of Columbia students that is down, and therefore that portion of tuition that's going towards our bond payment of our bonds, and also choice funds that we've already mentioned. So,
Emily, if I may,
yes, Sandy, go ahead.
of particular concern to the town is the fact that the debt budget is on the town side. And it looks like we're going to be about 70,000 plus short from the tuition contribution to the debt budget. So that is going to put pressure on town expenditures in other places.
Yeah. And if the Columbia numbers are projected to stay low, we will need to build that into the budget going forward. So.
Right.
Okay. The next, I think we're done with the town, and do you guys see the agenda now or not? Or are you still looking at the last thing?
So looking at the last thing.
Okay. Anyway, are there any other town or education updates? Otherwise, we'll move to item 5, which is new business. Okay. New business. The first thing was just to talk through the referendum questions. I know that if this is is this a correct document? Yes. There are 12 questions on the 11 questions on the ballot beyond the municipal election portion of it. The first one has to do with the fire truck, which I think we are all familiar with since we talked about it a lot last meeting. Does anybody have any questions on the fire truck question?
Emily, if I may again?
Yes.
I just want to remind the members of the Board of Finance that this is a public meeting and you are using town resources. So we cannot inform the public on how they should vote. We can discuss reasons to vote yes or no, but we cannot indicate to individuals how they should vote in this meeting. You may do so through your own social media, through your own email, as long as you are not using a Town of Bolton email or a Town of Bolton facility, which this Zoom meeting is.
Thank you, Sandy, for the reminder. Really what I wanted to do is make sure that everybody on the Board of Finance was aware of what all the questions were. I know that many of us were involved in the process, bits and pieces of it, and we've never really sort of, as a group, come back together and said, okay, here's how it all looks on the referendum. I can do this one of two ways. We can go question by question and see if anybody has any questions about it for Sandy or Jim. Like Sandy said, we can't talk about whether we are going to personally support them or not, because that's not the point of this. It's just an education component. Or if you would rather me not go question by question, I can just open it up to, does anybody have any questions on any of these ballot items? Do we have a preference? Charlie?
Oh, I know I have a couple of questions. So I don't know if we want to just do it general questions, or do you want me to just, wait until we get to the individual questions?
How about if I just quickly go and just say, okay, does anybody have a question or comment on them? And then when we get there, you can do yours. So we do it, we make sure that we don't miss any of them. Question 2 is about the replacing of the Board of Finance with the Finance Committee and expanding the Board of Selectmen from 5 to 7 and changing the term of that. Any questions? Charlie, yes.
Yeah, I've been approached by a number of people trying to understand this question. And generally speaking, they were looking at the timing of if it should pass. How is the timing going to be making all these changes take place? For example, does it go into effect the next election cycle? Does it go into effect, when and how? So it wouldn't be this election isn't affected by it. It would be the next election.
Emily, may I comment?
Yes, please do.
The very last or very close to the last page of this explanation talks about implementation. And whoops.
Did I go too far?
No, keep going. Nope,
That's-
top of that page. It becomes effective on passage. However, the effective date for proposed changes is July 1, 2022. And then if it's an elected position, they go into effect 2023 when the first set of officials shall be elected. So those people who are being elected now for a 4-year term will serve that term. And those people being elected for a 2-year term will serve that term.
I would just want to make sure I clarify. So if question 2 passes and the Board of Selectmen is expanded, the people who are being elected, will some of the people be elected for 2 years, or some people will be elected for 4 years, but they're only, no. Okay, I'm confused.
This election.
Can you say that again? Sorry.
This election next week is under the old rules. It's as if charter revision hadn't happened yet.
Okay.
When we get to 2023, the election of, because everybody on the Board of Selectmen will be up for re-election. There will be some people elected for a 2-year term and some people elected for a 4-year term to get onto the rotating schedule that the Board of Finance and the Board of Education are currently on. I can't tell you mechanically how that's going to work and who's going to run for what, but it will be a 2-year and I can tell you the first selectman and at least 2 selectmen, no, I'm sorry. The first selectman and 3 selectmen will be elected for 4-year terms, and then there will be, if this goes in, and then there will be another 3 who are elected for 2-year terms, and then they will be elected. Their successors will be elected for a 4-year term. It took me a very long time to wrap my head around it. I think the important things to remember are the effective date of July 22 and the election of November 23 being the first local election that's affected by the charter.
Can I ask a follow-up question to that? If question 2 passes and the Board of Finance becomes the Finance Committee, we have people who are being elected on the 2nd of this year for 4-year terms, and some of us who are still on the board that have 2 years left. How does that morph into the Finance Committee?
Give me a few minutes to check on that because I don't remember directly.
Okay. While you're checking, Bob Monroe, do you have a question?
Yeah, just, so in 2023 or so, does that mean that there would be, you'd be voting for the entire slate, the following election for the entire slate of selectmen and all at once?
That is correct.
Wow, so it could be like a total turnover.
Mhm. There could be a total turnover in this election if certain individuals had decided not to run.
Okay.
Wow.
I think that is one of the reasons why the suggestion was made to stagger it so that it is not a complete turnover every election of the Board of Selectmen. That was the rationale behind it, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Okay, sorry to make everybody seasick by zooming back up. Any other questions on question 2? Question 3, I think, is one that we are probably most familiar with, changing reduce to revise. Does anybody have a question on that one?
No.
Okay, administrative officer to town administrator, town administrator, sorry for. So it's a name change and a little bit of redefinition of the role and how it is, and it's a contracted role, correct? Okay. Question 5, in terms of limiting the administrative officer or the town administrator cannot serve on other boards at the same time because of conflict of interest. Any questions on that one?
Emily, I'm sorry, just to clarify, it does say at the same time, right?
Yes. I'm pretty sure.
Conflicting position.
Well, if they are no longer the town administrator, the administrative officer, then yes, they can sit on these other positions, but just not, they can't have that title or hold that position and be on other
Yeah,
administrations.
I was just looking at the wording of it, just to make sure it didn't hinder somebody who had been, you know, a town administrator and then not allowed to be on any boards, period. So I just wanted to make sure the wording was correct there and I understood it. Okay.
Okay. Town administrator can't participate where there's a conflict of interest with other organizations. Oops, that's the same one. Wrong one. Sorry about that. Question 6. Our chief financial officer is going to be renamed to the director of finance, which, based on the explanation, is a title that is more consistent with other department heads. Okay, question 7, the threshold for borrowing will be lowered of what needs to go to referendum. I think we as a group had talked to the Charter Revision Commission, or at least some of us had on this one. Does anybody have any questions on this particular item? Okay, merging planning and zoning and inland wetlands and making it appointed instead of elected. Question 9, changing how vacancies on appointed boards are filled and the procedures for removal of members on appointed boards. Okay, question 10, gender neutral language. And then question 11, I'm not going to read all of these. These are all sort of the smaller changes that were put in. Does anybody have any particular one that they have a question about? Okay. Hearing none.
Emily, I found the charter revision about the initiation of the finance committee.
Oh, okay.
At the first election after the adoption of the charter, and at every election held 4 years thereafter, 2 at-large members shall be elected to serve a term of 4 years each. At the first election after the adoption, 1 of the at-large members shall be elected to serve a term of 2 years, and then 1 at-large member shall be elected to serve every 4 years thereafter.
I thought there were 3 at-large members.
There are. So you've got 2 elected in November 2023, and then 1 for 4-year terms, and 1 will be elected for a 2-year term. And then at the following election, that's 2-year term seat will be up for a 4-year position.
Okay, I think I understood that. Okay.
And then the existing Board of Finance, should this pass, would then be replaced with the Finance Committee on the second Monday following the November 2023 election.
Okay.
So people elected to a new term this round will serve until November 2023, and it's probably a date between the 12th and the 20th.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Sandy, for looking that up. My goal, I'm just going through all of these, is I know that several of us have been involved. We sat through many meetings, and I wanted to make sure that we all had an understanding of what was on that ballot. I know people have come up to ask me about what all the questions are, and I just wanted to make sure that the information was pushed out to you. So if somebody comes up to you, you can also speak to these items. I know in your packet was also, nope, that's not it. The if I'm correct, if everything passes, this is the town charter. Obviously, if portions of it pass and other portions don't, it will have to be, those pieces will have to be parsed out.
Excuse me.
Okay. Then if there are no other questions on charter revision, the next item on the agenda, we alluded to it last meeting. Ross was fortunate enough to be at the polling places for all of our referendums. He was had the unique position to talk to people as they were coming in and leaving. And what he has done is he has sort of gathered all of what he has heard and put some thoughts together. My goal in sharing this is that if there are things that we as the Board of Finance in its current incarnation can do differently and better for the next round of budgets, I would love to start talking about them now and make some headway on them so that when it's budget season, we're not trying to do that on top of the budget. So if you guys will are okay with that, I will share my screen, unless you want to share your screen with the I think this is the correct document. Yes.
Yep, that is it. And I will just add that these are not filtered or any value judgment by me put on them. So I just wanted to present what I heard more or less as I heard it, and let us as a team look at this and decide, what to make of it. So as you go through, just keep that in mind, that also these are not in any particular order.
So the first couple are around just in terms of number of voters that came out. It was, you can see Ross had put in there the actual counts, yes and no. And that more people we kept getting more voters, but it was incremental. It wasn't a dramatic increase from one referendum to another. Which I think is the issue that I see with that, is that voter turnout on referendum was very low. And so one of the things that we can talk about is how do we encourage people to get out and vote?
Yeah.
So, Kristen.
I'm curious, Ross, did anybody on July 27th happen to bring up why they came out and voted and did not come out for June 15th?
Nope, they actually did not. And I presume it's the people who voted yes. They were a silent bunch. The people who voted yes, nobody really said why, other than that they liked the budget the way it was, originally. Right. I didn't get anybody specifically say, I didn't vote 3 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, but I'm here now. I didn't hear any comments like that.
Okay.
They were more talking about the present. They were there because, they liked the budget or they didn't like it. It really didn't go back to, the past with their comments.
Okay. But getting voters out there is one area that we definitely need to do some brainstorming on.
Because I'm less concerned about the way the vote necessarily goes than that a small number of people decide for the whole town. I would rather a larger number come out, and then we know that, yeah, this is in general really what people think, whether it's for or against the budget, instead of just a fraction of the people.
I agree. So it will, I hope people come out on November 2nd to vote as well. I mean, there's some, between the fire truck and all of the charter revisions, I really hope that we get a lot of people out there so that we can get a good representation of what people are thinking. Okay, If I look at the next one, a small number of voters offered actually took a copy of the printed budget and spent some time reading it before voting. These were people who expressed frustration in not being able to learn about the budget in advance due to their own busy lives and did not like voting about something that they were not familiar with. I'm not sure we can change people taking the time out of their busy lives to educate themselves about the budget. But I do think there might be some things that we could help them with by summarizing things maybe a little bit more concisely and giving them, some quick points to make it easier for them to call out the information and maybe then entice them to go digging deeper into it.
I agree. Keep it simple, bullet points.
So I think as we're pulling together the budget document, we can think about that aspect of it. Next one, several voters expressed, oh, Charlie, yes, go ahead.
Yeah, how are we proposing to do this so that the voters be paying any attention to what we're saying? We, obviously, if we do it at a meeting, nobody's there.
Yep.
But if do we send it out to our website? Do we put bulletins out there? And, I'm not sure how we can allow them to be able to look at things that they really aren't willing to go in and look for.
Which gets to my next point on 4, where I proposed a whole bunch of options to people, including, you know what, you're my constituent, I'll bring you a copy. Well, I won't be home.
Yeah.
So, that's why I put these 2 together, because there's some people where I'm busy, but I want to try to find some way of, understanding this even at the last minute. And then there's some others where I listed every possible thing, including literally, I just told one lady I would just bring a copy to her if she wanted it, when we updated it after our next meeting, and no, I might not be home. So
You're not going to reach those people. I mean,
No.
There's nothing you can do about those.
Yeah. But I
And-
think there's somewhere, there's the really busy ones, if there's some way we could provide it in more digestible chunks, like you were suggesting, Emily, and maybe some different ways of, where we can present it, different media that might be helpful. But I agree with the ones like number 4, there's not a heck of a lot you can do.
One thing that we did for the 3rd and 4th referendum was that we recorded a small CVC show. It was Sandy, Chris Davey, and I, and just talking through, some of the key points about the budget. Sandy, do we have any idea of how many people saw that? Was it effective? I mean, it didn't pass on the 3rd time, so we did it again, but.
I have no idea how effective it was, but we did get more than 400 views, which CVC said is more than average for a local show.
Okay. So that is something that we could possibly do again.
Sounds like a positive.
Referendum.
Yep.
So. Yeah, the second time around, we were even better at it. So, taking a look at number 5, people who looked at the budget document found it challenging. A 1 or 2 page summary up front, justifications. I think that ties into what we've already talked about. Maybe doing something with more summary and then diving into the details. Number 6, some things that people did not understand. COVID relief funds, state statute preventing the school budget from being lower than last year's budget, and consequences from reducing the budget from what was proposed. What did you mean by the C?
It's like, what are you giving up in return for a lower mill rate?
Oh, okay.
That's all that was, is, the trade-offs. Okay, good, we're not gonna give you a mill rate increase, but it's going to be a cut to your children's school budget, or if you don't care about that, then the town may not be able to do, the road
Trash pickup.
maintenance or trash pickup or plowing or whatever to the extent you're used to. That type of thing where, we make it clear, but, there's a challenge with that because when we had our own talks, it's typically like, okay, we'll figure out what this does to the budget later. Type of discussion. We don't really talk concrete about ourselves, what the consequences are going to be.
Right, because it's really the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Education, after they've gotten their final number, to decide exactly what goes, how they
Yeah.
do make those reductions. So
It's
if they
just-
were to say things beforehand, it would just be potentially or theoretically, it wouldn't be an actual, this is what would get cut. But
Yeah, and I think
it's an
that's
interesting, I mean, it would be nice because that way people would have a concrete, this is what we're going to give up. We have to, this is what's going to go.
and that's what I think is the challenge there. It's not real to them.
Mhm.
It's an arbitrary decision, and it's stuff like when I've done my own budgets for, business or other organizations I'm in, it's okay, we need to cut. What is that cut going to do? What are we going to give up in, capability? What are we going to give up in staff, in return to, fit inside this budget? And without that, it's kind of hard to make this real to the taxpayers, I think. Again, I don't know what the way around it is, but I think that's another key thing in addition to, that bullet pointed summary is, an understanding of some of the things people just don't get because they don't fit easily in a sound bite, and, the consequences of things.
Mhm. Bob Monroe. You have
I
your
think
hand-
Kristen had her hand up earlier than I did, but
I don't think so. Go ahead, Bob.
I would just say, to me, in my experience, go back to number 4 there, and the last sentence tells it all, really. Could not propose their own alternative solution other than bulk mailing. But then said they'd be too busy to read it. And that's reality, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So that's what I'm saying, is there's some things like this we don't have that much control over. And I think Emily brought that up too, but of the stuff that we can do better, that might indirectly influence some of this other stuff, then that's what we need to look at.
Okay, Kristen.
No, I just think, throughout the year, even maybe we should just do a better job of communicating throughout the entire year when we can't afford to do something, and make sure that it gets advertised just about money and reductions and budget. So I don't know if it's really just, doing it around budget time. I think we could probably do a better job of things that could possibly get cut or in jeopardy, and just keeping the conversation going throughout the year. Just because I kind of felt like when we went through this budget cycle and we finally started getting things out and referendum was happening, I think people just had fatigue at that point, and they were just kind of lost. And if anything was going to happen, nothing was going to change. But I think if we keep the communication up, throughout the entire year, as opposed to just looking at that point in time, that might help also. I don't know. I'm spitballing here.
I like the idea. I think we can, I had one other idea, which I think weaves into something later, so maybe we can come back to see how that plays in. A comment, the school budget was oversized, the tail wagging the dog did not reflect declining enrollment, took money from other areas, increased taxes to where people on fixed incomes can no longer afford to live here. Well, I think that is really, people who take a look at, the largest chunk is the education budget. And it is for those people who are on a fixed income, they don't have kids in the school system anymore. And that is something that I have heard as well. I'm not sure there's anything we can really do about it, except explain that by having a good school system, it helps your property taxes. helps your property values when you go to, sell the house. It's an attraction for people into town, so.
Yeah, and and again, that's the flip side of what you just said, Emily, is it makes it good for me to sell my place, but it doesn't make it good for me to live here. So that's that's what comes out, when we talk about this. So I'm just saying that's kind of the feedback, that I got about that too, was that, yeah, that's great. My value of my house goes up. My taxes go up now because, gee, the mill rate didn't change, so my house is worth more now that we had an reassessment, and so I'm paying more. And the only way I get the advantage of that is to sell. So that's what I just want to make clear, that we have, that there's that understanding of this. And I didn't hear as much from people about, I don't have kids, why do I have to pay for them? It was more of, they understood it's important for kids to get a good education. It's just the financial consequences, I think, of that to people who have lower incomes. So I don't know what the answer is, but I just wanted to clarify based on, a little bit more of what I heard.
Thank you. Kristen.
Yeah, just a note on that one. On looking at number 7, I don't know if there's really, again, there's anything we can do for these people. And it's unfortunate. I get the fixed income. However, I would hate that to look at the people who fit into number 7 being influencers to other people who do in fact have kids in the school system, and get them thinking that they don't, that the school budget is inflated. Because the reality is we've had programs that, yeah, we say they get cut. The reality is that they are eliminated. Perfect example, what happened with the Spanish program with kids in elementary school. That program hasn't come back, and it's probably not going to come back. So I would just hate to see, I don't really know what we could do about it, but I would hate to see this influencing other voters that do in fact have kids in the school system. I don't know if that makes sense, but.
No, good point.
Yeah. Again, I think it's something just to be aware of in our conversations, less than, is there anything we could do to immediately, even if we all said, yeah, they're right, we want to cut the school budget in half, we can't by state statute, so we do have that limitation anyway. So I just think this is more for awareness for when you're talking to people, where there's some folks are coming from.
Okay, next one, people who voted no felt we did a poor job. People who voted yes felt we did a good job. Regardless of how they voted, they generally did not care about, want to know about, or understand the work that goes into building a budget. Which frustrates me a little bit, because this is the foundation for our town. And so I'm not sure we'll ever get everybody to want to understand the budget. But I do think there's some things that we could do, to your point, Kristen, on communicating throughout the whole year, where we might be able to start infusing a little bit of knowledge in everybody about the budget and the process and what's going on, so that when it comes budget time, maybe there's a little bit more interest in going to get more information from those who I think are the ones that you're referring to here, Ross.
Yeah. And again, also the spirit of this comment that I got, I took it as more of, when you go to a store and you're having trouble getting waited on, and they give you a song and dance about why they don't have somebody there, the computer's broken, do you really care? The result isn't what you expect. And so I think that's more of what's here. When they get the result that they expect, like the mill rate went down, we did a good job. If we, if they get the school budget being what they want, we did a good job. I think it's more of that thing. It's when you think it's a good job as long as it goes the way you want it to go. And if it doesn't, then you don't really care what went into what happened behind the scenes. That was kind of how, I meant that, and sort of the philosophy that I was getting from people when, when I was talking to them. It's more focused on an expected outcome that they may not have been involved in or understand.
Mhm. Okay, Bolton is not business friendly. Impacts of this are higher taxes and little help for business. I don't think that's a direct on from a finance perspective.
And Emily, may I?
Yeah, yeah.
I think this is a misconception among our residents, and I've been trying very hard to fix it. Bolton, in the past 2 years, has won awards for our ease of navigating the land use process and excellence in administering the land use process. So, and we've actually had expansion of businesses and growth of businesses and businesses moving into town. So, this perception of there's no help for business owners or those who want to start a business, I think, unfortunately, leans back to the taco stand guy down on Route 6 who wanted to not follow the process, not apply for a permit, but wanted to be able to continue his business under his own rules at total disregard for everybody else's rules. And the perception that our businesses don't pay a lot of taxes, which in fact they do. And if you look at the social media commentary about Dollar General, which is probably going to add on a rough estimate, just by looking at what Dollar General added to Coventry's grand list and Manchester and East Hartford's grand list, we're talking about $100,000 between real property and personal property taxes. That's $250,000 from one business. But if I were the operator of a similar business and was thinking I might want to move to Bolton, I'd read those social media posts and say, I don't want to be there. So I think we're our own worst enemy there, but I'm going to shut up.
Yeah, and if I could add to that just really briefly, if you go back to look at the documents that were shared earlier on the town side with regard to revenue, we're almost halfway there in the building department with our projected revenue for the year. And that's a direct result of the building permit fees that are being paid by Dollar General and the subcontractors that are working for them to build that store. So I think, it is a kind of a double-edged sword there.
Thanks, Jim.
So,
Charlie? Oh, sorry.
no, go
Yeah.
on, Charlie, you go.
Thank you. I think that whole perception is what Connecticut's noted for, being the tax state. I think that is the adverse effect Bolton's feeling. I don't believe that Bolton is not, I back Sandy 1,000% on this. It is business friendly. I've been fully aware of how business friendly Bolton is and have been for years, but the perception is that it's not. And it's just something I'm not sure how you can eliminate, because a lot of people in town don't want businesses in certain areas.
Right.
And that, therefore, they're not complaining about how we're not business friendly, but it kind of, like you say, it's a double-bladed sword. It's an issue, but it's just a misconception and based upon probably the view of what Connecticut is like overall, the tax state,
Yeah.
So I'm not sure what we can do to change that. I don't really think there's much we can do except continue with what we have been doing, which is offering excellent service for the businesses that are interested.
So I just, again, what I'm doing with a lot of these is I'm not saying whether they're right or wrong, and a lot of them are perception, and often perception matters more than what, reality is, unfortunately, particularly in politics and things like this. And you know what, I just actually, Sandy, I know all the work that the land, and to you too, Jim, I know all the work that the land use departments have done, and I've noticed that, you know, in my tenure, you know, on the, you know, Inland Wetlands Commission, how things have gotten way more efficient and the staffs are all working together behind the scenes and much smoother process, fewer balls being dropped. But then again, I didn't know that we got any of those awards that Sandy mentioned. So if I didn't know about that and I'm chair of one of these land use commissions, are we getting that out to other people? You know, because I don't recall seeing anything like that, because if I did, I certainly would have brought it up to my commission to say that their work has been appreciated. So maybe there's an opportunity and,
It's
you know,
hanging in town hall and it's been there for 2 years, so.
now, I haven't been in town hall for about 2 years because of COVID.
But I think it brings up a good point of, you know, we need to tout our wins. We needed to,
Well, that brings up another whole point, and you know, we've got the Bolton Bulletin, and I'm sure we talked about these awards in the Bolton Bulletin, but it probably was on page 2 or 3. There was a small article in the Journal Inquirer because the office Selectman's office did a press release, and the Connecticut Economic Development Council did a press release, but the JI's circulation in Bolton is dwindling every day. So I don't know how we're back to how do we inform somebody who doesn't want to take the initiative to inform themselves? And no offense, Ross.
I gathered you were just sort of like giving me a backhanded compliment. Thank you, Sandy.
I think it, you know, begs that question of how do we get the word out?
Yeah.
You know,
So I think
I
that's
think it's-
probably the more important thing than necessarily the specifics of is Bolton business friendly or not. It's really how do we go and get that message out? And I think that applies as a theme to a lot of these too.
mhm. And I think just to wrap up number 10, lack of familiarity with the voting process or the equipment. Communication out, we could wrap that into something to get out there to people so they're familiar with that. But
That was
Right.
less about the vote, you know, they're having trouble with voting than just say, that's how I knew there were a lot of new people out there coming in to vote, which is a good thing.
yes,
You know, I said it backwards, but that was the real point of that was there were a lot of new people because they said this was their first time voting and it was important enough for them to come out, or you could tell just like that they hadn't done this before. You'd go up to help them and they would thank you and say, yeah, I haven't done this before. So I think
That's awesome.
that was the message of that, is that there were a lot of people who had not voted before. So even though the numbers were small, there was a group of people in there who did feel it was important enough to come out and they hadn't done so before.
Yeah, and there's tens of millions of more people like that who have no idea what voting is or walk in there with their eyes closed. And
Yep.
hence we have claims of whatever.
Mhm. Kristen,
Yeah, I've got a question on that one because we might be able to do something here. Working number one with the senior center might help. And then the other thing is can we work with the high schools and make that incorporate just voting as part of the senior, because it's the senior class that would be.
We actually do is, you know, the registrars of voters. I'm like an assistant registrar, and we do have a program required by state statute to go and work with the high school students every year to explain to them about voting, give them ballots and all that stuff. And we either can do it directly, or with COVID, we've kind of delegated it to a teacher so that we didn't have outsiders coming in. But
Okay.
it is something that the registrars, you know, work with the high school with already. But that, you know, it's just want to let you know we are doing that.
Okay. What about with the senior center? Is that another avenue maybe? I don't know.
I can bring that up
Okay.
to the
And Ross,
registrars.
thank you so much for doing all this. This was,
Yeah, it was
I think
terrific.
it was very
Thank you.
eye-opening. Thank you.
So, what I hope everybody could do is just sort of think about all of these. And I mean, everybody knows the process that we go through. Start coming up with ideas of what we can do. I think there are a couple things already. We need to produce something that is short and sweet, bullet points, keep it simple. Summarize it before it gets in, all the details. There's some things that are easily done. Maybe we do a few more TV shows. Working with the senior center, maybe getting some information into the hands of the seniors at the high school, in addition to what the registrar of voters is already doing. So I think there's some easy things that we can start thinking about, and how do we want to attack that? We're not going to make any decisions tonight, but I just wanted to get everybody to start thinking about what we could do. One of the things that I am hoping to sort of include that is get the word out that, hey, it's not just the budget referendum. There is the process that leads up to it. And maybe we can describe what the whole process is. What does the town do? Sandy's raising her finger. What does the education side do? Go ahead, Sandy.
Sorry. One thing I meant to mention before, when I was at CVC last week, the town of Ellington is putting together this is how we build a budget. And CVC thought it would be a great idea to not only to expand that and involve the boards of finance and the chief executive officer or the town administrator of all of the CVC towns, and get a panel involved as to, this is how we put our budget together and this is what's different, and let's share some best practices. They thought that would bring in quite a few viewers, those people who watch TV. So I think you can expect that someone from CVC, Emily, will be reaching out to you probably in the next month to 6 weeks, because they want to get it started before what they view as budget season, which starts in March.
Yeah.
Right. And the reality is budget season is starting now.
Mhm.
I mean, I know the school is building their budgets, and I know the town is building their budgets. So, I mean, it has started. I love the idea. I think that be interesting.
I was just going to say, Sandy, it's just funny that you brought that up, because at my church, I'm working with folks to do the same thing, because we typically just have our annual meeting and present the budget. Nobody's really seen it until then. And then it gets can get kind of tempestuous at times, because no one's seen it and they're wondering what decisions went into it. So this year we're doing something different. We started out with a church budget 101, how do you build a church budget? And did a simple PowerPoint presentation about that. And then we're doing a series of, monthly meetings where we're just going to talk about the budget. Here's what we'd like to do. Here's the money we have doesn't quite match. What do you guys want to do about it? Here's some thoughts of, what you could cut, how we could get more money, and, whatever. So that was met favorably. I don't know, how that scales up with a town. It's also a matter of our culture versus Bolton Congregational Church's culture. But just saying, the idea of what you said, Sandy, was met favorably, of just to get that involvement, this is just what we do. So it's not a secret. There's no secret, nothing going on and hiding or anything. This is just how it works. And you're invited to come in and take a peek. And since you haven't been coming in, we're going to stick it in your face, type of thing. But
Okay.
Seriously, I think it's a great idea, because I just seen it's been received positively in our church. So it certainly wouldn't hurt to try it in the town.
Yeah, agreed. I'm willing to help out with it. Obviously, if anybody else on the Board of Finance would like to also participate, it doesn't have to be me, but definitely that would be great. Any other questions or comments, feedback from? So start thinking about different ideas. I would like to get some, for the budget document. That's going to take some work. So we're going to need to sort of talk about what we can do there and get some ideas done on paper well before the budget process. So, okay. That was the last item on our agenda, if I'm not mistaken. Our next meeting is November 17th. So, which is a week before I think that's the third week. Is that correct? It's the third week of third Wednesday of November, as opposed to the 4th, because the 4th is the day before Thanksgiving and we didn't want to do that. So I just want to make sure that everybody is aware that date. Okay. And then at that point, I don't have anything further. Does anybody have anything else?
Nope.
Nope.
Stay safe and happy Halloween, and we will see you in November. Thanks everybody for joining me.
Night
Take care,
all.
all.
Take care.
Have a good night.
Bye.
Bye.